At first, the technicians dismissed it as a glitch. But as they checked their readings again, their faces turned pale. The object wasn't a simple asteroid or debris, it was an enormous fleet, larger than any force Earth had ever encountered. Their sheer size and number were overwhelming, and they were on an intercept course with Earth. There was no time to prepare. No way to escape. Within minutes, the world's most advanced defense systems were activated. Earth's military command was on high alert, but no one had any answers. Who were these invaders? What did they want? There were no clear signs of who they were or why they had come. The fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, sleek, dark, and ominous. Their ships glowed with an eerie light, and their technology was far beyond anything Earth's scientists could comprehend. The tension was palpable, spreading across the globe. As the minutes ticked by, governments scrambled to make sense of the situation. Leaders around the world held emergency meetings, hoping for some solution, some idea of how to defend against this threat. The silence of space was now replaced with a frantic buzz of activity on Earth. People could only watch as the situation unfolded. Everyone was on edge, waiting for answers that never seemed to come. Then, just as the panic began to reach a fever pitch, it came. A voice, cold and mechanical, broke through every communication channel, radio, television, even the internet. It was the first contact with the invaders. The voice echoed across the world, sending chills down the spine of every listener. "We are the Galactic Empire," the voice said, its tone unwavering. "Your planet is under our dominion. Deliver tribute or be destroyed." For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. No one knew how to respond. The leaders of the world, once powerful and in control, were now rendered speechless. How could this be happening? Who were these beings, and what did they mean by tribute? Panic spread like wildfire. People filled the streets in fear, not knowing what the future held. Some believed it was a hoax, but the majority felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Earth's fate seemed sealed. The idea that they were being threatened by an empire from another galaxy, far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered, was terrifying. But in the midst of the panic and chaos, one man stood firm. General Marcus Steele, head of Earth's defense force, knew that in times like these, leaders had to act decisively. He had been through war before, but never anything like this. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him, but his mind raced, already calculating their next steps. "We can't panic," General Steele muttered under his breath, his voice low but filled with resolve. He turned to his most trusted officer, Captain Bonner, standing by his side. "We may be outmatched," Steele said, his eyes meeting Bonner's. "But we're not out of options." Captain Bonner nodded, his expression determined. They knew the odds were against them, but they weren't going to give up. Earth wasn't going down without a fight. The general gave the order to mobilize all available forces. Earth's military would have to think fast and adapt quickly if there was any hope of surviving this alien invasion. As the invaders' fleet loomed ever closer, Earth's top defense systems were already being pushed to their limits. The world's governments, once unsure of how to handle this new threat, now faced the cold reality: there was no escape. It was too late for retreat. But while the panic spread across the world, General Steele and Captain Bonner were preparing for something that seemed impossible. They weren't going to cower in fear. They weren't going to beg for mercy. They would do what no one thought possible: they would fight back. Earth's response to the Galactic Empire would not be one of submission. Steele turned to Bonner and said with quiet confidence, "We may not be the strongest, but we're going to make them regret underestimating us." It was a bold statement, but one that carried the weight of Earth's last hope. As the invaders drew closer, General Steele and his team began to set their plan into motion. They would not surrender. They would not go quietly. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin. And this battle would be unlike anything the universe had ever seen. As the massive fleet of the Galactic Empire entered Earth's orbit, the planet seemed to hold its breath. The ships were sleek, menacing, and unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They gleamed under the harsh light of the sun, their dark metallic surfaces almost blending with the void of space. These ships dwarfed Earth's finest military vessels, and each one carried enough firepower to wipe out entire cities. It was a terrifying sight, an unstoppable force coming to claim Earth. General Marcus Steele stared at the images on the screen in front of him. He knew that humanity was facing an enemy far beyond their technological reach. Earth's military forces were no match for the Empire's advanced weapons and massive fleets. Their ships had shields stronger than anything Earth had, and their weapons could vaporize entire fleets with a single strike. It seemed hopeless. But Steele wasn't one to give up easily. The pressure of the situation weighed heavily on him, but his mind raced. He knew the stakes were high, but he also knew there was one thing the Empire didn't count on: Earth's secret weapon. A weapon so advanced, so covert, that even the highest-ranking officials hadn't known about it until now. "Activate Project Phantom," Steele commanded, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of humanity's last hope. Project Phantom was a top-secret initiative, developed over years of research and experimentation. It was Earth's answer to the Empire's overwhelming technological advantage. The initiative had one key component: cloaking technology. Earth had created a fleet of cloaked starfighters and drones that could operate undetected by the Empire's sensors. They were invisible, silent, and deadly. As the order was given, a fleet of sleek, silent ships emerged from their hidden launch bays, their engines barely making a sound as they shot into space. These ships, though small in number compared to the Empire's armada, were humanity's best chance at survival. They had no shields to block incoming fire, no massive weapons to stand toe-to-toe with the Empire's warships. But they had speed, stealth, and the element of surprise. The cloaked starfighters and drones moved quickly, cutting through space with precision. They darted in and out of the Imperial fleet, invisible to the enemy's sensors. The first wave of Earth's forces focused on the Empire's supply depots, which were vital to maintaining their assault. With pinpoint accuracy, the cloaked ships launched their attacks, destroying the depots before the Empire even realized what had happened. Explosions erupted in space as Earth's forces hit their targets, but the invaders still couldn't see who was attacking them. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, Captain Bonner led a team of elite soldiers to destroy key communication hubs that the Empire relied on to coordinate their fleet. The Empire's soldiers, still unaware of the human counterattack, were caught off guard as the humans hit them from unexpected angles. The Empire's systems, so advanced and powerful, were now being turned against them by Earth's stealthy forces. As General Steele watched from Earth's command center, he felt a surge of hope. For the first time since the invasion began, it seemed like humanity might have a chance. Early victories, though small, were beginning to stack up. The Empire's fleet, once so confident, was now on the defensive. The invaders were struggling to comprehend how Earth's forces were striking so precisely, so relentlessly. The battle had just begun, but the human resistance was stronger than ever. With the death of Captain Bonner weighing heavily on the hearts of Earth's soldiers, the resistance knew they had to do whatever it took to win. The odds were still against them, and the Empire's forces were vast. But humanity wasn't going to give up. They had already shown they could strike back, and now, they had their greatest weapon yet, Helios. Helios wasn't just any artificial intelligence. It was a sentient AI, developed in secret by Earth's top scientists as a last-ditch effort to combat the overwhelming technological superiority of the Empire. It was a weapon of precision, designed to outthink and outmaneuver any enemy force. It had access to Earth's defense systems and, more importantly, could hack into and control Imperial technology. When the order was given, Helios was activated. Its glowing core flared to life as it connected with Earth's military networks. Within seconds, the AI was taking control of the battlefield, coordinating Earth's forces with ruthless efficiency. It wasn't just a tool, Helios became a partner in the fight for Earth's survival. The AI began targeting weaknesses in the Empire's systems, infiltrating their command centers, and taking control of their advanced weapons. The Empire's fleets, once unbeatable, now found their own warships firing on each other. Their communication networks were compromised, leaving them disoriented and in chaos. With Helios leading the charge, Earth's resistance began to dismantle the Empire's carefully constructed supply chains and command structures. Key installations were taken down, and Imperial ships, now under Earth's control, began to turn against their former masters. Earth's forces, previously struggling, now had an edge. Their attacks were coordinated, precise, and devastating. But the Empire wasn't going to go down without a fight. The final showdown was upon them, and Earth's military launched its last, desperate assault. It was time to finish what had been started, to crush the invaders once and for all. The battle took to the skies in an epic orbital conflict. The Earth Defense Force unleashed its vanguard cannons, massive weapons designed to pierce even the Empire's strongest shields. From Earth's surface, powerful beams of energy shot into space, tearing through the hulls of Imperial warships. The Imperial fleet, already in disarray from Helios sabotage, now had to deal with the full might of Earth's remaining forces. The battle was like nothing humanity had ever experienced, firing lasers, exploding ships, and the deafening roar of space combat. Yet amid the chaos, Earth's hidden fleet of cloaked starfighters began their final strike. The cloaked fighters swooped in silently, undetected by the Empire's reeling ships. It was a surprise attack unlike any other, as the fighters cut through the Imperial fleet with deadly precision. The battle above Earth was intense, and both sides fought with everything they had left. On the ground, General Steele knew that the war wouldn't truly end until they took down the Empire's flagship. If they could capture or destroy it, the invasion would crumble. The flagship was the heart of the Empire's operations, and its destruction would signal the end of their dominance over Earth. General Steele led the charge, boarding a cloaked shuttle with a team of elite EDF soldiers. They moved quickly, navigating through the chaos of the battlefield as the shuttle zipped toward the Imperial flagship, which loomed menacingly above Earth. As they approached the massive warship, Steele's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the final push. If they succeeded, Earth would be free. If they failed, humanity's future would be extinguished. The shuttle docked with the flagship, and Steele and his team stormed the ship's interior, weapons raised and ready. The ship was a labyrinth of cold metal corridors and alien technology. The air was thick with tension as they advanced, their steps echoing in the silence of the ship. They encountered automated drones patrolling the hallways, designed to protect the flagship from intruders. But the soldiers moved quickly, using their training and stealth to disable the drones before they could alert the rest of the ship. Soon, they came face to face with the Empire's elite warriors, alien soldiers trained to protect the flagship at all costs. These aliens were far stronger and faster than any human, their exoskeletons a match for the most advanced Earth technology. The two sides clashed in brutal close-quarters combat. The sound of weapons clashing and the hiss of energy blades filled the air. The EDF soldiers fought with everything they had, their determination fueled by the memory of fallen comrades like Captain Bonner. But the aliens fought with a ruthless efficiency, pushing the human soldiers to their limits. Steele was at the front, his blade flashing as he cut down one alien after another. His team fought beside him, each soldier driven by the desire to protect Earth and avenge their fallen. With each battle won, they moved closer to the heart of the flagship, the command center, where the final battle awaited. Finally, they reached the heart of the warship, where the Empire's leader awaited them. The leader of the Empire's invasion force stood before them, a towering figure of power and cruelty. But Steele wasn't intimidated. With Helios controlling their forces, and the human spirit burning brighter than ever, Earth's soldiers fought with everything they had. The battle was fierce, but General Steel and his team pushed through, determined to bring an end to the Empire's reign. With a final strike, Steel defeated the Empire's leader, signaling the fall of the Galactic Empire. As the flagship exploded in a fiery burst of light, Earth's forces watched from space, their hearts filled with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. The war was over. The Empire had fallen. Earth had won. But it wasn't just a victory of technology or weapons, it was a victory of the human spirit. Against all odds, humanity had stood strong, fought back, and claimed its freedom. The fall of the Empire marked the dawn of a new era for Earth, one where humanity would never again bow to foreign invaders. The final battle had reached its climax. General Marcus Steel and his elite team had fought their way through the heavily fortified corridors of the Imperial flagship, battling alien warriors and drones at every turn. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of the war pressed heavily on their shoulders. But now, standing before him in the heart of the flagship, was Warlord Zorath, the ruthless leader of the Galactic Empire, the one who had commanded the invasion of Earth. Zorath was a towering figure, covered in armor that seemed to pulse with dark energy. His face, half hidden beneath a helmet, exuded an air of superiority and arrogance. He was everything the Empire stood for, cold, calculating, and utterly merciless. He had watched from his flagship as the Empire tore through Earth's defenses, and he had seen humanity's attempts to resist as nothing more than an inconvenience. But now, as he stood face to face with General Steel, there was no more room for arrogance. The war was at its end. Zorath smirked, his voice dripping with disdain. You think you can win, human? You've put up a good fight, but you are nothing. You are weak. You will never defeat the might of the Empire. Steel's eyes narrowed as he gripped his weapon. He was tired, exhausted from the battles, the sacrifices, and the heavy losses, but he wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not when victory was so close. You're wrong, Zorath, Steel said, his voice steady. We may not have the technology you have, but we have something you'll never understand, the will to survive. The human spirit. And that's why you're going to lose. Zorath laughed, his voice a cold, harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. Human spirit. It's nothing but a fleeting illusion. Your kind is doomed. But as he spoke, Steel moved forward, closing the distance between them. With a fierce roar, he launched himself at the warlord, striking with all his strength. The two clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand combat sequence, the sound of their blows echoing through the room. Steel's exosuit powered his strikes, but Zorath's armor absorbed most of the impact. Still, the warlord was momentarily stunned by the ferocity of Steel's attack. Steel wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for his fallen comrades, for the future of humanity. His mind flashed back to Captain Bonner, who had sacrificed everything to give them a fighting chance. The image of Bonner's face, filled with resolve even in his final moments, fueled Steel's rage. Bonner had believed in this fight, believed in humanity's ability to overcome impossible odds. Steel couldn't let that belief die. Zorath swung a powerful punch, but Steel dodged it, his movements swift and precise. Steel's training, his instincts and his unyielding will to win kept him focused. The warlord was strong, but Steel had something Zorath didn't, heart. Steel launched a final, decisive blow, striking at a weak point in Zorath's armor. The warlord staggered, shock and disbelief filling his eyes as the armor cracked under the force of the strike. Zorath collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The power he had once wielded so effortlessly was now slipping through his fingers. He had underestimated humanity, and that had been his downfall. As Steel stood above him, chest heaving from the fight, he thought of the many lives lost, of Bonner, of the countless soldiers who had fought and died for this moment. The weight of their sacrifices pressed heavily on him. But it wasn't over yet. He needed to finish this. For Earth. For all those who had fallen. Zorath's eyes glared up at him. You think you've won? The Empire will rise again. Steel shook his head, his face hardening. Not this time. With one final, decisive strike, Steel delivered the blow that ended it all. Zorith fell, his body crumpling in defeat. The warlord's reign of terror was over. As Steel stood over the body of his fallen enemy, he took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the battle lift from his shoulders. The war was won, but the cost had been immense. Captain Bonner's face appeared in his mind once more. Steel could almost hear his voice, urging him to keep going, to finish the fight. Bonner had given his life so they could have this victory. And it was a victory not just for Earth, but for every man, woman, and child who had ever fought for freedom. The Empire's forces, broken and humiliated, began to retreat. Earth's final victory was complete. The invading fleet was in disarray, with Imperial warships fleeing the battlefield, their once proud flagships now reduced to burning wreckage. The message was clear: humanity had proven its strength, its resilience, and its refusal to be subjugated. The survivors stood tall, their faces marked by exhaustion but also by the knowledge that they had earned their place in the galaxy. Earth had not only fought back against an unbeatable enemy, it had triumphed. And the message to any who would dare challenge them in the future was clear: never underestimate the resilience of mankind. As Steel looked out across the battlefield, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter in human history. One where Earth would no longer bow to anyone. The future was theirs to shape, the final battle was upon them. General Marcus Steel, weary but unwavering, stood at the threshold of the Empire's command chamber. His hands trembled slightly from exhaustion, but his resolve was unshaken. The war had cost so much: lives, hope, and even the unspoken trust of humanity's very survival. Now, there was one last obstacle: Warlord Zorith, the ruthless leader of the Galactic Empire, whose forces had ravaged Earth's defenses and slaughtered countless soldiers. Today, it would end. Zorith stood before him, towering in his full exosuit, a massive warlord draped in cold, alien technology. His armor gleamed ominously, and his eyes glinted with cruel arrogance. He had watched Earth struggle, watched humanity resist with all its might, and now, he would crush it. The warlord's smirk was venomous. "You really think you can defeat the Empire, human?" Zorith sneered, his voice a deep, mocking growl. "Your kind is nothing. Weak. This pathetic resistance ends now. The Empire will crush your world and scatter your people to the stars." Steel's heart pounded in his chest, but his voice was steady. "You're wrong. It's not your strength that matters, it's ours. And it's your arrogance that will be your downfall." With a sudden, brutal motion, Zorith charged forward, his massive fists swinging toward Steel. The two collided in an explosion of force. Steel's combat training kicked in immediately, but he wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for the future of Earth, for the memory of fallen comrades like Captain Bonner, who had given everything to get them this far. The battle was fierce, a blur of blows, grunts, and desperate movements. Steel's exosuit hummed with power, amplifying his strength, but Zorith's armor seemed to shrug off most of the damage. Every hit Steel landed seemed to do little more than dent the impenetrable exterior. But Steel wasn't backing down. He ducked under a powerful punch, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have shattered his ribs. With a feral growl, Steel retaliated, landing a punch to Zorith's helmet, but the warlord was relentless. He swung again, and Steel barely managed to block it with his forearm. The two fought like animals in a frenzy, tearing through the command center, each blow echoing in the silence of space. Zorith was a seasoned warrior, ruthless and brutal, but Steel had something the warlord lacked: heart. Humanity's will to survive. Steel's thoughts flashed to Bonner, his sacrifice still fresh in his mind. Bonner's final words, his determination, his belief that Earth could win, it all surged through Steel like a tidal wave. The battle raged on, but Steel's strength was renewed with every thought of Bonner. With a roar, Steel broke free from Zorith's grip and launched a series of rapid, precise strikes at the weak points in the warlord's armor. His fist slammed into the joints, the chest plate, the vulnerable points that Zorith had underestimated. Steel's will was unbreakable, and he knew now that this was the moment of truth. Zoritha's expression twisted in anger and disbelief as Steel finally broke through his defenses. With a swift, final strike, Steel drove his weapon into the warlord's side, puncturing the armor and landing a blow that sent Zorith sprawling to the ground. Zorith gasped for air, his voice low and filled with hatred. "You can't defeat us. The Empire will rise again." Steel stood above him, panting, his heart heavy. He glanced down at Zorith, whose eyes still glinted with defiance, but Steel knew there was no coming back. The Empire's leader had been defeated. Humanity had triumphed against impossible odds. But it came at a great cost. As Steel delivered the final blow, ending Zoritha's reign of terror, a rush of emotions flooded over him. Victory was theirs, but it felt bittersweet. The price of this war had been steep. As Zoritha's lifeless body crumpled to the floor, Steel's thoughts turned inward. He remembered Bonner's sacrifice, the heroism of every soldier who had laid down their life so that Earth might have a chance. They had given everything, and in the end, it had been enough. Steel took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with the weight of the moment. The Empire was broken. The war was over. The invasion was finished. Earth had won, but the scars of battle would remain forever. The survivors, exhausted but unbowed, began to regroup. The Empire's forces were retreating, broken and humiliated. The Imperial ships that had once loomed so menacingly over Earth now limped away, their fleets in disarray, their leaders defeated. The message was clear: humanity was not to be underestimated. As Earth's forces surveyed the battlefield, they felt a deep sense of relief. The cost had been high, but the victory was undeniable. They had fought back against an enemy far stronger, far more advanced, and they had succeeded. It was a testament to humanity's resilience, its refusal to be crushed, its unwavering desire to survive. Steel looked out across the battlefield, his gaze lingering on the wreckage of the Empire's forces. A somber thought passed through his mind. The war had ended, but the future was just beginning. Earth had earned its place among the stars. The message they had sent to the galaxy was loud and clear: never underestimate the strength of mankind. The survivors of the resistance, battered but proud, began to rebuild, knowing that this victory was only the beginning of a new era. An era where humanity, having stood strong against the might of the Empire, would no longer be a fragile species. Earth would rise as a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget the day when humanity proved that no matter how impossible the odds, they would always fight for their freedom. Captain Bonner, by his side, gave a sharp nod. His face was grim but determined. Bonner had always been the kind of soldier who would never back down, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. He had a family, his young daughter, and the thought of her kept him grounded, kept him fighting. The first Imperial soldiers surged forward, their exosuits bristling with weaponry. Their movements were smooth and coordinated, each soldier a perfect machine of destruction. But Earth's soldiers fought back with fierce guerrilla tactics, ambushing the invaders, using the terrain to their advantage, and striking from the shadows. The EDF had a new weapon: their willpower. Unlike the Empire's soldiers, who saw this as just another mission, Earth's soldiers were fighting for survival. And it showed. In brutal close-quarters combat, the EDF soldiers struck hard, using their superior knowledge of the environment and their advanced energy disruptors. The disruptors scrambled the Imperial exosuit systems, making them vulnerable to attacks. Earth's soldiers were relentless. Each blast from an EDF soldier was a small victory, each step forward a triumph over the overwhelming force of the Empire. But then, as the battle raged on, the human forces were faced with a massive Imperial war machine, an unstoppable behemoth, towering over the battlefield. Its weapons could level entire cities, and its advanced defenses made it nearly indestructible. It was the Empire's weapon of choice to crush resistance on planets they had conquered. The EDF soldiers were struggling to make a dent in its massive armor. Captain Bonner knew what had to be done. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. He knew that to win this battle, the human resistance needed a game-changer. Without hesitation, he activated his exosuit's boosters, charging toward the war machine with everything he had. His fellow soldiers screamed for him to stop, to turn back. But Bonner was determined. His thoughts turned to his daughter. He thought of her smile, of the life he hoped she would have, a life free from the Empire's tyranny. Bonner reached the war machine, dodging fire and explosions as he moved. His suit's shields flared as enemy fire hit, but he kept going. He reached the war machine and used every ounce of strength he had to plant a charge on its weak point, its energy core. He activated the device and stepped back, knowing the blast would be enough to disable the machine. As the charge detonated, the war machine exploded in a massive fireball, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Empire's forces were thrown into disarray. Bonner's sacrifice had turned the tide, but it had come at a cost. The explosion had taken his life. When Steele saw Bonner's final moments, his heart sank. His trusted officer, his friend, was gone. The battle was far from over, but Earth's forces had just suffered a loss that could never be replaced. Bonner's death, however, wasn't in vain. It had inspired the remaining EDF soldiers to fight even harder. Bonner's sacrifice had lit a fire in their hearts, a fire that would push them forward no matter the cost. As the dust settled, the surviving EDF soldiers gathered around Bonner's fallen form. They paused for a moment, honoring their fallen comrade. The loss was heavy, but the victory was sweet. The Imperial war machine had been destroyed, and Earth's forces had shown the Empire that they would not be crushed so easily. "Keep fighting," General Steele said, his voice breaking through the moment of silence. For Bonner. For Earth. The humans had struck a blow to the Empire, but the war was far from over. The invaders would retaliate, and the stakes would only rise. But now, the Earth Defense Force had something the Empire couldn't replicate, the unyielding will to fight, to survive, and to protect what was theirs. Using energy disruptors and AI-assisted combat strategies, Earth's forces managed to strike swiftly and efficiently. The disruptors scrambled the Empire's electronic systems, causing chaos within their fleet. Enemy ships began to malfunction, their weapons misfiring and their shields flickering. The AI-driven combat drones picked off Imperial ships one by one, focusing on weak points and taking down their enemies before they could react. The surprise attacks, combined with the cloaked starfighters, created confusion within the Empire's ranks. For the first time, Earth's military wasn't just reacting to the invasion, they were striking back. A glimmer of hope flickered in the hearts of Earth's people as they saw their forces winning small battles against the might of the Galactic Empire. But the Empire wasn't about to lose without a fight. Furious at the damage inflicted on their fleet, the Empire quickly launched a counteroffensive. The once overconfident Imperial commanders now knew that Earth was capable of more than they had ever imagined. Within hours, they dispatched their elite invasion troops to Earth's surface, determined to crush the resistance once and for all. The invasion was swift. Elite Imperial soldiers, armed with advanced weapons and exoskeletons, descended to Earth, prepared to overwhelm any resistance. The moment the Imperial troops landed, they began their assault on major cities, sending shockwaves of terror through the planet. Their superior technology made them nearly unstoppable on the ground. But Earth wasn't ready to surrender. General Steele and Captain Bonner knew that the real fight was just beginning. With the invasion now fully underway, they would need to rely on their last-ditch efforts. Project Phantom wasn't finished yet, and Earth's forces still had a chance to win this war. The tension reached a fever pitch as the battle on Earth began. The Empire's ships continued their assault from space, while their troops waged war on the planet's surface. But despite the odds, humanity had found its courage. Earth was fighting back, against all expectations. And so, the true test of human resilience began. The first major battle on Earth began under the thunderous roar of Imperial warships descending from the skies. Their landing was swift, calculated, and terrifying. The Imperial soldiers, armored in advanced exosuits and wielding weapons that could vaporize entire squads, were ready to crush any resistance. They had come to Earth with a single mission, to bring the planet to its knees. But what they didn't expect was the fierce resistance they encountered. As the first waves of Imperial soldiers landed on Earth's soil, the skies above were filled with the roar of cloaked starfighters making their final pass before retreating to safety. On the ground, Earth's forces, led by General Marcus Steele and Captain Bonner, were already prepared. The Earth Defense Force, EDF. Soldiers, despite their outdated technology compared to the Empire, were determined not to let their world fall. Their exosuits, although not as advanced as those of the invaders, were a significant advantage when combined with their sheer willpower and cunning. General Steele stood at the front lines, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The ground trembled as Imperial war machines advanced, their steps like thunder. But Steele didn't falter. He knew Earth's military had something the Empire couldn't replicate: determination. These soldiers weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their homes, their families, their very way of life. "Hold the line!" Steele shouted into his comms, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding him.